You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael from Arizona. With me always are my good friends,
Jay from the hills of Texas.
And AK Mike back in Texas.
and we would like to welcome you to the show. We just got back from the Arizona Electric Festival, and if you've been listening over the last couple of weeks, you'll kind of got up to date. We had a 2-day event, more than a 3-day event, I think. But we wound up actually staying Saturday night for the night fly, and then Sunday morning as well for a little bit. We flew some stuff there as well. But I just got, we kind of wanted to recap a little bit of our Saturday night because Mike and I did the night fly with the Walrus, and it seemed to have been both of our sort I'm looking for. It came to the realization to the both of us that the airplane, as it started to gain altitude, was no longer looking like an airplane. It was looking like a purple blob. And we have decided that may be our eyes getting older. It's not as, and Mike was a little uncomfortable, I think, flying it because it just turned into this purple spot as opposed to flying. And
Well, and I thought about that for a little bit too, Mike. It's possible that it's, I just recently got new glasses within the last couple months, and I haven't flown at night with them. So it's possible that they're not really in a space to, they're not dialed in.
yeah, and that
night
may
fly.
be the case.
So in my case, that might be what's
And
going on. I didn't feel like you were having trouble, so maybe it's just me, and I
well,
appreciate you.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was a
owning
little,
some of that, but
yeah. I think there was a little bit of a breeze, and I don't know what it was with my eyes this weekend, but every time I looked down the runway towards into the wind, my eyes would all water up, and I'd be like, "Oh, I can't see anything," because I'm like looking through water lenses. And I think that, every time Mike was like, "Okay, I don't got this. It's not working," and he would hand me the controller, and I'd be like, "Okay, it's all blurry to me anyway." So I bring it
geez.
down.
because the water in your eyes.
Yeah, because I'd be staring at him into there. But anyway, we had a really fun time in the night fly. We kind of closed out that evening with Shannon, as you heard from our last episode. And then everybody kind of made their way to, their own individual evenings. And so several people packed up and, we're trying to get out before the rush on Sunday. And Mike and I found ourselves, because we're kind of the nighttime security, we found ourselves with nothing to do in the middle of the night. So I've recently purchased a night vapor, and it was new in the box. We tried to fly it the night before and got it trapped on the Armada.
And when he means we, he's really talking about him. I had to throw you under the bus, Mike, because the thing is when you get that thing out of the box, it flies nose up. And I remember when we used to fly this in Alaska, that's the way we would fly him, nose up. That thing would just be like really
Just
poking
hovering.
along, and it was,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like a 3D plane. And because it was windy enough, it wasn't very
Mhm.
windy, but it was windy enough. It just carried that thing on the top of. I mean, like in an instant, it was on top
Oh
of
yeah. Yeah.
that roof. And so we had to improvise and put some picnic tables together to get up on top of the roof to get the airplane.
We did, and it's funny because we wandered around there for a little bit, knowing that thing was up there, and I tried to see if it was upright, to fly it, and I'm
You
like,
standing on the edge of the trash can, trying not to fall into the trash can on the edge of the fence. I
That
was
would've
like,
been
he's gonna
hilarious.
kill himself. He's gonna kill himself.
yeah, pretty much. I was hanging on for dear life, and I'm just barely looking over, like I can pull myself up and just see it, and I'm like, dang it, I can see where it's at, and it's upside down, and that
I'm just
really,
saying, thank God he could hold on to something because he would have
yeah.
been on his butt.
Yeah, I would have. It was, and my wife would have just been, yelling at me the whole time. You know how
She
old
might
you
now
are.
if she listens
Yeah,
to this. Yeah.
exactly. Anyway, as Mike pointed out, we were a little bit resourceful because I thought at one point they had a ladder, that was
They
out,
probably did
and I'm
at one
sure it
point.
was probably somewhere, but
Or it was in the closed, locked.
yes, in the
Yeah,
locked.
I think that's where they had one.
It's probably so. Anyway, I was like, "Well, I just need to stack something on top," and so I was trying to convince Mike to actually let me get on his shoulders and then him climb the fence,
My
but
back.
he
He's like, I
he
lost 30
was a
pounds, so
he was a no-go.
it should be a do.
I know, right? So I told him, I was like, "Okay, so you don't really think that climbing the fence with me on your back is a safe deal to, safe thing to do?" He's like, "No."
If
And so
if my last name was Valenza, definitely.
So anyway, long story short, we got some picnic tables. We stacked them on top of each other, and we climbed up. But the bad news is that now there's footprints all over the top of the tables, and I felt really bad because we're having a pizza party, the next day, and so I've got like a paper towel. I'm trying to rub all the feet print off the top of it.
Get the evidence on
Well,
it.
Uh,
anybody who put their pizza on the top of those tables anyway,
that's
you
true.
know,
That's true.
they're rough people.
We did have
They know how to
plates. We did have plates.
exactly.
So anyway, we got the night vapor down, and we tried. That was
We
it for
made
the
some
night.
modifications to it. Yeah, oh, that's right.
That was it
That's
for
right.
the
Wasn't
night
it for the
because we
night?
decided,
That's
yeah,
true.
it's going to happen again because the wind was kind of getting out of hand, and that was Friday night.
That was Friday night, right?
Saturday night we got back right, and we found ourselves with nothing to do, and so we got the vapor back out, and I said, well, I really want to do this vapor. There's no wind, everybody's gone. Uh, there's just the lights, kind of the lights under the Armada, how they leave them on for night security, and Mike and I are standing there, and it's really not that cold. I mean, it was cold the first night, but
No, yeah, it
it
was.
wasn't really that cold. So he and I weren't like shivering at all. And so I got the transmitter, we fired it up, and he's like, "We should go out to the runway." And I'm like, "Dude, it's at nighttime, and I'm trying to maiden this thing, and we have light in here. I only have to fly it around like this table, right? I mean, I know it has lights on it, but you're trying to get me to trim it out and do all that stuff in the dark. I should have done it during the daytime, but it's one of it's one of those things, and I'm like, if we fly inside the Armada part right here, there's not only is there no wind, but I can see it. So I said, just set it down, and he's like, okay, it's gonna go on top of the Armada again. I'm going, no, I'm gonna keep it under the Armada. He's like, okay. So I took off and kind of was flying around really low to the ground. I got it all trimmed up, and then it was basically flying hands off. And we found out that there's a little like a gear on it that if you crash it, it pushes the gear forward and now the rudder won't work. So we found that out because, we kind of ran it into the some I thought I was gonna hit the fence, so I chopped the throttle and it kind of, ran into the ground. And then he picked it up and, set it down. I took off again and now it won't turn. So it's just going, brrr, right out in the middle of, towards the tables and the Armada and stuff. So I chopped the power and almost landed on the table, which gave me an idea. So I picked it up, I set it on the table. Mike fixed the little gear on it, said it's okay. He was going to set it back down. I was like, no, leave it on the table. So I took off from the table. And so I flew around the Armada and, in between everything. And he's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I go, I'm going to try and land on the table. So I came in,
Instant aircraft carrier.
yeah, instant, right? And we just touched down. And then the next thing you know, boom, it just it falls off the table, and we didn't do a very good job of collecting on the carrier itself, but it did give us an idea. And so as a result, we definitely tried to do it again. And so I was able to do it, and then we flew it around through a battery, which lasts surprisingly, Mike. It lasts a long time. I mean,
It did.
the battery lasted probably, I don't know, 5 minutes, 8 minutes maybe. So
Yep,
I
yep.
landed on the table a long ways, a couple of times, and then I said, "Okay, your turn." And so I gave it to Mike. We switched batteries, and then Mike was trying to land it on the table, and so he did. He was successful, and so then we started giggling like two schoolgirls. I mean, we were just laughing, and we were flying it across the tables. We were landing on the table, and then skipping to the next table, and then flying around, and then I started flying it around like all of the tables. So I was like going in and out and around the fence and out into the parking lot and then around, and it just was a good time. We were having a really good time.
What
And
was funny
then
to me, Mike, was we were trimming it out and trying out different trim positions for the elevator because first it was like totally
Mhm.
nose up and just sort of flying almost 3D like, and you're like, that's not going to work for me. So you changed the elevator and you put it so that, like, now it's like a speed demon relative to the vapor,
That's true.
and
Yeah.
the thing was racing around, and it was harder to land on the table because you're just booking. I mean, it's
Oh
just
yeah.
going full out, full out. like you could hit the front of the table, but then you'd roll out all the way to the end of the table. It's like
And
that's
fall
not going to
off.
do it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to do it for me. So you adjusted it so it was a little bit nose up. But if you didn't have it completely level like that, the rudder was almost
Mm,
useless. So with a little bit of wind, you needed to have rudder, so it needed to have more elevator there, so that would be
right.
flat as it
Right.
flew. And that to me was the funny thing. It's like it's going too fast. I was like, it's a vapor, dude.
Mike
But
was like,
you were
"This is
right,
great. It's exactly how it should be." And I'm like, "No, dude, this thing is flying way too fast. I mean, I'm
way
I'm
too
at half
fast.
throttle, and this thing is like booking
That's
around, you know?"
yeah,
I
that's
go
that's a that's a phrase you never would think you'd hear for a vapor.
for a
Yeah,
This is
vapor,
way
I
too
right?
think they
fast.
call that an
It's way too
oxymoron.
fast. Yes, pretty much. But anyway, it was a good time, and we were just getting ready to switch batteries. I was flying it around, and a car pulled up, and this couple, kind of pulls up. Mike walks over. Hey, can I help you? And they were looking for the night fly.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, you're here. Here he is, right here, the one guy flying in the night fly." And about that time, the battery went boom, and I was headed, was gonna fly out in front of their car because they were sitting, like in the parking lot, and I was gonna fly like around the front of the car and then come back. And they had their windows down. I for about a second, I thought about flying through the window, but I didn't
Yeah,
think
that you might have
pro-
scared him.
wouldn't have been a smart thing to do. But
Super kosher. Yeah.
yeah.
They
So
might have
anyway,
swatted it. It's a mosquito. Bah!
and ruined my vapor.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
anyway, Mike introduces himself, and yeah, we can kind of talk about it because they're a very interesting group,
So we
or
meet so
couple,
we
nice
meet
couple.
Montana and Rochelle,
Yeah,
and these are a young couple. He's got his own business, auto detailing business.
yeah.
Not cleaning your car, but like doing paint
Touch up
designs
work
and
and yeah, that kind
and
of thing.
body work and some other
Right,
stuff, and it's
right.
pretty cool stuff. And so we just started chatting with him, and he was like, "Yeah, we came one time, and we were sitting in the bleachers, and it was kind of cool, and we enjoyed it. But then, and then Rochelle speaks up, she's like, yeah, so I got him a plane for Christmas,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so he's got this plane, and so Montana does what I see more and more people do." Um, that I wouldn't have done because I'm just too chicken. He just went out and flew. He took this plane, it has safe technology or that kind
Hmm.
of idea, and he just started flying. And thankfully for him, it can fly fairly easy with this, you know, gyro and whatnot set up. And so he just basically said, "Yeah, I've crashed this thing 100 times."
Hmm.
One of the cool things about the plane that he had was the prop comes off. It's a little hub attachment, and it just pops right off. So it wouldn't bend the motor or won't break the props. I mean, I think we broke one prop, but while we were flying, but it's it's uh it's kind of a good setup. And I think he did painting on one of them at least,
He did.
and
Yeah, he did a
it
custom
was a
paint job.
beautiful paint job.
It was amazing.
Unfortunately for him, it changed the weight of things,
Yes.
and it just doesn't fly like it did. And so, but now he's just going to hang it up on the mobile or something, and
Yeah.
show it off or something. Say put up on the shelf, whatever. But yeah, they were cool, and both he and his wife Rochelle want to be pilots, like they want to fly.
Right.
He flies all the time,
Yeah.
and so Mike, what would you add to that?
Well, so the interesting thing when they showed up is that they were excited about the RC hobby, and they they wanted to see the night fly. So just to kind of back up, they have a 5 month or 5 week old baby, and their mom was babysitting, and she said, go on a date, just go out, take some time, because she wanted to be with the new baby, and the baby was sleeping anyway. So Montana's like, hey, let's go over to that RC event because they just live like 5 miles down the road. Unfortunately, they had gone out, and then on their way back, they swung in, and things were pretty much winding down. And it was just Mike and I flying the Vapor. But it gave them the opportunity to get an audience with us, right? And so we kind of took advantage of that, and we, kind of started chit chatting with them, and they super nice. They got out of the car, and we kind of walked them around, and they were telling us about these little airplanes. Now, the airplanes that they bought are about the UMX size aircraft. They're not big, so they got them off of Amazon, and I think they sell them at Superstition Hobbies too. It's Rage RC. They're these little, they come with a controller and everything, but they have these three modes. And they were talking about how difficult it was to fly these things, except on beginner mode. And
Inter
the beginner
or
mode,
intermediate, yeah.
you know, or intermediate. He said I just started flying intermediate, but he said beginner mode, I'm I'm better at that. And then I just fly full throttle all the time. So he said, I just, toss it and then I go full throttle and then I turn around and I go, well, does it have a rudder channel? And he goes, oh yeah. And I go, it's got rudder. And he goes, yeah. And it's got elevators and it's got ailerons. I go, so you have all three axes in this little bitty plane? Because I mean, I'm flying this one around, only has two axes, right? It's got the elevator and a rudder. And so he goes, yeah, it's all three. They fly, they do really well. And she's like, yeah, I have one too. And then we had so much fun with them that we bought like 3 or 4 more. So we have all these different airplanes, but some of them just don't fly well. And I was like, well, that's kind of strange. I don't know why they wouldn't, or, I mean, they're micro. So, I mean, I don't know, So we kind of took them around and we were explaining the difference, between the Trojans and the jets. And he mentioned, oh, I have a Haboo. I
Oh,
was like,
really?
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "My wife bought it for me, and so I've already flown it, like, twice." Now, I will tell you that he took off, flew it around, and from what I understand, the landing kinda got him because, landing these
It's a
little
Habu.
airplanes and landing that Haboo he was flying in his, front yard, just wasn't the place to be flying that fast jet. So it did have some bumps on it and some bruises, if I'm not mistaken, from what I gathered. But we really didn't go into. He obviously does body repair stuff, so he had repaired, and like Mike said, he had painted this particular airplane. He painted was a Spitfire, and he had crashed it, put it back together, glued some stuff. He ripped the tail wheel off or something, and so he put some glue in there. And he told us that the airplane was just like up and down, up and down, up and down. He was very hard to control.
Tail heavy.
And Mike goes, "Well, maybe it's out of CG since you put hot glue in the back."
Oh,
And I started laughing and I said, "You live in Arizona. I wouldn't put hot glue anywhere in
no.
Arizona because,
No, 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 no.
once you start flying it in the summertime, you won't have any hot glue back there anymore. And, but they were interested. It was kind of refreshing. And they spent probably 30, 40 minutes with us, just walking
Yeah.
around, looking at airplanes, asking all these questions, which were just phenomenal for someone that is getting, kind of the spark to get new, these little airplanes. And then they were asking all kinds of questions like, well, how come it does this? Or, what would cause it to do this? And I was really impressed with how much they had gained knowledge wise just by trial and error. I
Yeah,
mean, they really
clearly a
didn't
smart
know.
couple. Both of them are
Yeah.
clearly smart.
Yeah.
Like,
Very,
they
very,
they have
very
definitely
intelligent.
brains on their head.
Now, did either one of you
But
two hand them a card, one of our cards? Because you're
yes, we
notoriously.
did.
Oh, you did.
I
You
think we
guys actually
both
brought
did.
cards this time?
Believe it or not,
Yeah.
Jay, both of us brought a stack of business
Whoa!
cards. Yeah, and Mike's mainly because we knew you weren't going to be there, so we had oh crap, I got to bring you because Jay's not going to be there. But Mike's goal was to hand out all of them, and he came pretty close.
I did.
Good
Yeah,
job.
so
Yeah,
we
I was
did.
handing
Yep.
them out.
And we talked to they were excited. They were like, "Oh wow, you podcast really on RC?" I'm like, "Yeah, you should listen." So hopefully they'll listen, and of course we're talking about them, so
So so
hopefully they're
so to
excited
that
about
end,
it.
Mike, to that end, I actually reached out and got a hold of Montana and Rochelle.
That's
And
awesome. Oh, you mean since then?
uh, yeah, yeah. So after we they came back Sunday and
Oh, they did come back
we
Sunday. Yeah.
yeah, they came back Sunday and we flew. They brought their planes, and then Mike showed them how a plane should be flown. And
Well, I
it's like,
trimmed it
yeah,
out
this is
actually.
well, this is in the expert mode, and they're like, that looks like beginner mode. He goes, nope, it's expert. And then he does a barrel roll, and they're like, oh wow, it can do a barrel roll. It's like, yeah, you can fly it. Now those things have buttons to do loops and barrel rolls and stuff if you want,
Yeah.
but Mike likes to do it for real. So
Yeah.
yeah, he was flying it inverted and stuff, and he's like, "Oh my god, that plane's flying upside down."
They
And
were they
so,
were somewhat impressed, I think. So,
yeah,
but
it was good.
but
It was
I
a
was
good little
impressed
show.
because when I first saw this airplane, first thing I thought was, well, it's way out of balance. So, but he did a good job because Mike had mentioned the night before, maybe you should put if the airplane, flies all pitchy, put a little hot glue in the nose section and kind of bounce it out. And he's like, yeah, okay. So he did, but I don't know how
And
much
it
was in the
helped.
back.
It
Yeah,
helped
but
a
I don't know
lot.
how
He
much
said
he
it
put
was
in the back, and I don't know how much he
yeah.
was going to put in the front. He
He
could have
probably could have
unloaded a
put
whole
I think
stick.
he probably could have put more up
A
front,
stick or two.
given the way it would be
Maybe.
heavy.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but I took I took the wingtips, I bounced it where it should be bounced, and it was sitting perfectly. But he
I think
had
the
custom
rudder was
painted
off
it.
or elevator was off or something.
Yeah,
Remember?
it just had a little twist in the back end of it, which I don't think really would have affected too much of it. But he did have it custom painted and airbrushed with his daughter's name on it, and I was like,
That
wow,
was
this
awesome.
is a little heavier. I mean, because it had been clear coated and it was bright pink, and it was a really nice paint job. I really liked paint
It
job.
it was
S-
beautiful. Like, I can't wait
So
to see, like, if he gets a hold of a bigger plane or a real
yes,
plane and he
yes, he
paints
would
it, then
definitely
he'll be able to
customize it.
paint it without affecting it so much.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah, and Mike's correct. They came out Sunday. They brought these little airplanes. He bought a whole bunch of batteries, and he's like, "Hey man, we just want to see somebody that we can understand that can fly this to see if it's really worth the investment, right? Because we own a couple of them, and we were thinking about buying some more because they have a whole group of them, but they're fairly expensive. They're about $100 or a little over $100. And so he said, let's bind it. So I said, yeah, sure, we can go fly it and see. And so I took off in the beginner mode, and it was incredibly pitchy. But I got it slowed down. I got it flying back around. I took it out of beginner, went into intermediate, and I liked intermediate better. And so I was flying around intermediate, and but it was still really pitchy. I mean, if you just even move the stick, the thing would just start porpoising. And I thought, he goes, "Is that in expert or beginner?" I said, "Well, it's in intermediate right now." And so I went up a couple mistakes high, and which for that thing is 30 or 40 feet, and I clicked it into expert mode. And as soon as I went to expert mode, it departed controlled flight. I mean, it literally. And I was like, he told us that if you just flick it back to beginner mode, it would level itself out. Yeah, that airplane, not not even close. So it went into this death spiral. I pulled the power off. I tried to push the nose over and get it all, ready to, recover.
I
And
think you
it
need another 50 feet before you could have recovered that, Mike.
probably so because it was wrapped up pretty tight,
Yeah, it did.
and it hit nose first. So
It
it did.
corkscrewed down.
Yeah, it corkscrewed pretty quickly.
But it
And
didn't really damage the plane. It broke the prop, but it didn't really damage the plane at
yeah,
all. I
mm-mm.
mean, if you look at the plane, it was like in reasonably good shape,
Yeah.
except for the fact that it's not the CG was off,
So I take
as
it,
we believe.
were these planes EPP or just regular foam or
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
they
yeah,
were
no
EPP.
Yeah.
EPP.
Mhm. So,
So,
he goes
so
he
go
said,
ahead.
"Oh,
Yeah,
he goes, that's okay." I said, "Well, this one's a little troublesome. It may be worth getting a new one or, if you're gonna fly it." But he goes, "Well, this one is a Corsair. It flies great." And he had painted the nose of this Corsair. He had scratched the nose, so he had repainted it from yellow because it was yellow and blue to pink, the same color as that the Spitfire was because he had the paint. So it was bright pink and it had bright pink wingtips on it. So he had changed the color scheme, but it was really cool. And so I took off, and as soon as I took off, I flipped it into intermediate mode and was flying it around. Got it all trimmed because the thing does have trim, and it was a little out of trim. It wanted to climb and dive and do all these crazy things. And once I got it trimmed up, I just held the controller up. I said, "This is hands off in intermediate," and then right then I flicked it to expert, and it just stayed level because it's got a little gyro like a UMX. And so they're like, "That's in expert mode?" And I go, "Yep." And so then I ripped it around and I did a couple of rolls, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a roll." And then I ripped it upside down and flew inverted down the runway. And, we're only flying like in a 20-foot radius right in front of us while everybody else is like whipping around us. And, yeah, so it was fun. We had a good time. I landed it. We let Mike fly it, and Mike did just as good. And then they wanted to see a
I
bigger
didn't fly it
airplane.
upside down though.
No, but you did, rolled it and some stuff, and then they wanted to
Yeah,
see a bigger airplane fly, so I got my L-39 out and I flew the L-39 for them. But
with the
so
gear down because problems.
yeah, the gear door was sticking and the gear wasn't coming up, and I didn't want to.
Made you nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then
Well, go
you
ahead.
said you called them.
Yeah, so
You've
I
talked to them
called
since
them
then.
yeah,
Yeah.
I called them and so I talked to them and said, "Hey, it was really great to meet you guys and we really enjoyed, having a conversation." And they were like, "Yeah, likewise, we really enjoyed you guys gave us so many great tips." And so I was trying to figure out I was asking them, what is it that you felt was helpful? And the way Rochelle put it was, "Yeah, we like the backstage pass."
Mhm.
I was like, "What?" She goes, "Well, before we were sitting in the bleachers, but now we're like on the flight line talking to you guys. You're talking term of our ailerons, elevator, rudder. How does it work? What
Right.
happens? The different flight services and stuff." Because Mike did a nice short tutorial on
Mhm.
what happens when you turn the plane sideways. Now the rudder becomes the elevator, and things like that. And and then also they said, I said, "Well, what you just decided to start flying planes?" He goes, "Yeah, I've always been." This is Montana talking. I always been into RC. I have cars and I had helicopters and stuff, but I never flew planes before. And I just decided, then Rochelle got this gift for me for Christmas, and so I just went out flying. And I said, like, okay, so yeah, you just crashed the thing. He goes, "Yeah, that's fine. I don't really care because I'm learning." And I know I'm going to crash it, and just the way he approached it is different than I would have approached it, but I kind of like his method. If he's willing to depart with money to be able to train himself via the crash method, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And these planes have that safe, quote unquote, technology stuff. So it doesn't really happen as often as you might think it would, because of that stuff. It saves you from really kind of hurting yourself
Mhm.
because you're flying it around. And then uh, one thing Rochelle said, which I thought was funny, is, "Yeah, we'd never really done podcasting before, so we went to listen to your podcast. We didn't know how to do it. Like at first, it was kind of something they didn't." And I was like, "Wow, I didn't ever think of that. Like
Yeah.
that isn't essential part." But then we talked a little more, and I was like, "Yeah, you're right. Not a lot of even from 20 to 50, you talked about what's a podcast, and
Yeah.
you get that a lot."
Yeah.
Um, and so for me, it's like, well, I listen to podcasts because I'm on a drive and, I'm just going to get mad at everybody driving around me if I'm stuck in traffic. So I might as well listen to something that'll be entertaining, or, where I can learn something. And so it was just great to talk to these people who are excited. I asked them, "What's the kinds of things you think would help you, moving forward?" And he goes, "I don't really know yet. I'm just going to keep flying and crashing and doing whatever." But, the conversation that we had and the tips that Mike gave them and all that stuff, he said, just, in fact, Rochelle made a point of saying, "Yeah, when you went flying the other day, you were way better." Because I think Mike was talking about uh, the Mike Barstow syndrome, which is banging the sticks left and right.
Mhm.
Where you fly with aggressive behavior, I guess is what I would call it. And and he said, "Yeah, you don't really need to push that hard. You just it's really soft. Plus, when you're using beginner mode, you have to push harder because it's designed that way.
Right.
If you go to intermediate and you're pushing that hard, it's gonna perform
Bad.
more wildly." Yeah, and then, of course, expert's gonna just turn it upend it, right? And so, it was just, a lot of good back and forth, with them on their experience and what they plan to do, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say, and what how their adventure goes.
Yeah, and we actually took time to introduce them to Shannon on Sunday
Mhm,
morning, and
mhm,
we got them hooked up to say, "Hey, look, you should really come out and fly with the club because they have." He took them in and he said, "We have a club trainer. We could do wireless buddy box. We can let you kind of get out there. If you wanted to bring your jet out, we could, help you fly that too, where you're not crashing it all the time, and at least getting some stick time with someone that can save the jet and not have to repair it."
mhm,
So he was like, "Really?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's all wireless now. You can just, sign up and then, you come on in and learn to fly." So they were kind of excited about that too. And I think that the demo with both that airplane and the L-39 both, because I remember Rochelle was talking. She was I had them up at the flight line because initially they were standing like way back. And I'm like, "No, if you want to see this, come up, come up to the box. So stand in the box." And then I said, "No, watch my fingers." And she's like, "Look, look, look, he's not even moving the sticks, and yet the airplane's doing all this stuff." And I told her, I said, "Well, yeah, if I really want to be aggressive, I can pull really hard on it and it'll, I tumbled it." And so Mike was explaining, yeah, he's really, aggressive with the sticks, but in the majority of the time he's flying, he's right in the middle and they're just letting the airplane kind of do it. Cause they mentioned that the airplane, when they went into a turn, it just dived to the ground. And I said,
right,
"Well, why?" And I
yeah,
said, "Are you using the rudder?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't ever touch that thing."
yeah.
And so we kind of talked a little bit about
Yank and
aerodynamics.
bake.
and just how this yank and bank, and that's why Mike was saying that. I said when you yank it over into a 90-degree knife edge and you start pulling on it, that elevator acts as the rudder acts as an elevator because it's facing this way now, not up and down, but horizontal. And you could see it in his face. He was like, "Oh yeah," because it kind of the light bulb kind of came on, and I'm like, "So if you're not even using this part over here, you got to pull a little bit to kind of keep the nose up." And then that's interesting that you've talked to them, and she said that he got a little better after coming out and watching.
Right. Well, I
So,
know we got to wrap it up, but I do want to say that he said that watching was key to moving forward for him.
oh, good.
Um, and that, he looked at the price of buying a simulator, and his answer to that was, "Well, I'll just better spend the money on another plane
Hmm.
than buying a simulator." And you know what? I totally get that. We wouldn't have been able to do that because we built from sticks when we started.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a normal suggestion for us to say you should use a flight simulator first. But now, uh, in fact, he's not the only one who said that to me. I have a friend who just started getting into flying too, and he's like, "I can fly this thing with no problem. Like, I don't even really need the simulator." It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it, because the technology has come such a long way.
And it has, because honestly, he's right. I mean, how many times do you say he crashed that thing and just picks it up and puts the new prop on and just keeps
He
on
said a
going?
lot.
Where
Yeah,
where that's what the simulator does, right? Simulator allows you to crash, hit a button, and then just keep going. So if you have a smaller airplane that will do that for you and it's the real thing, yeah, why spend the money on the simulator?
right,
Because this airplane will do exactly the same thing.
right.
Now it may take him longer doing it on this airplane because he's flying something that is, if he's banging the sticks around. In his case, he got to come watch what a pilot would do with these sticks, as opposed to trying to learn to go to the next mode and bang them around again. So we were able to kind of pull him out of some of that. So I think
Hmm.
that his explanation is valid, and I totally get where he's coming from. So
So
well,
so
more power to them.
let me ask a quick question,
Right.
guys. So he didn't get a chance to fly a bigger plane, like
No,
the Night Owl
No.
or whatever that you guys have. Both you guys
no,
have
The
those other gliders.
walrus?
The
no,
Walrus, yeah, the
no.
Night Walrus.
No, no, no. Mm-mm.
So he didn't get a chance to fly Ladder or Bixler or any kind of plane
No,
like
there's
that.
no big slurs out. We
No,
didn't have
and
anything like that.
we were a little more cognizant of the fact that we are not club members and we're at a club that, that's why I introduced him
Well, no, I get why you did
to
to Shannon, but I
Shannon.
figured you probably broke that plane out and said, "Well, here, get on the sticks, see
No,
what you
no,
can."
because
No,
they are
couldn't really
not
do
they're
that.
not AMA. We told them to join the AMA and then come back out and then
And
they
that's the
could.
second thing that they said
Right,
they were gonna do. It's like they
right,
were totally on that.
Ah,
They're
okay,
gonna get on it
gotcha.
because they want to.
right.
And they left me in the conversation with, one of the good thing is we're connected with this club, and we're really excited about being around people, showing us what they can do, and learning more
Mhm.
about what we need to be
Gotcha,
doing so we
gotcha,
can fly
gotcha.
better.
Excellent.
So
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was
we didn't
really
want to
good.
break any of
We
the
we
rules.
had a good time. Was really impressed with both of them. So, and I'm wishing them the best of luck. And they have our an email address. So if you actually wind up listening to this episode, the both of you can email us at the parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com, and feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to get back with you. And I'll answer whatever questions you guys have. And obviously, Mike just got in touch with them, which was kind of funny. He's got a really quick, funny story though when he called him.
So I called him. I didn't have his phone number, so I had to look it up online, and I got it from Facebook. And then I dialed his number and left a voicemail. Of course, it doesn't say this is Montana for mobile auto detailing. It just says leave a message for the phone number. So I did, and he probably didn't pick up because who's going to answer a call from Alaska? Nobody knows anybody from Alaska, right?
Right.
And so I get a call back a little bit later, and I recognize the number, so I answered it. And I go, "Hey," he goes, "Oh, hey, you called me and left a voice message for me. This is Montana. What can I help you with?" And I was like, "Oh, I met you guys at the event back in Arizona. I don't know if you remember." He goes, "Who are you?" And I was like, "We met at the RC event." And he goes, "No, I don't remember that." I was like, "That's weird. Two Montanas with mobile auto detailing." He goes, Yeah, I'm just joshing with you. I remember. I was like, oh man,
my,
that's
good
just
for
rude.
him.
All right.
I
He got
loved
me
it.
so bad.
I loved it.
You gotta
That was
let
awesome,
that fish
so-
take the line and just take that bait.
Dude.
Yeah, right.
Can't
He
pull
sure
right
did
away.
too. He
did.
got me. Yes,
Ooh.
my old man came right out.
Yep.
So funny.
Mike swallowed a hook, line, and sinker.
I sure did.
That's awesome.
Hook, line, and stinker.
Exactly. Well, we want to tell both of them that we appreciate their input and we enjoyed hanging out with them. And best of luck with your RC career. Feel free to reach out to us. And actually, congratulations on the new baby as well.
Right.
We love meeting new people, and it's a very enlightening experience for us as well. Because sometimes I think we find ourselves in that old hat where we're doing the same things, and then to get this renewed vigor of, oh my gosh, there's somebody excited about it, because I remember those days. They were many years
Good
ago
days.
for us, but I do remember those, being excited and wanting to
It was
go
just
out
last
to-
year, right, Mike?
Yes, just it was last weekend. What are you talking about?
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you sound old.
Older, 1 week older. Well, for those of you that are following us, make sure you check out our YouTube page. And for Michael here in Arizona,
And Jay from the hills of Texas.
And AK Mike back in Texas.
there you go. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Let's fly.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.